All right, welcome. Welcome to Old School Media Podcast. My name is Patrick Rooney, and we're going to get right into it today. We did a show with a gentleman named Kevin Starrett, who's the executive director of Oregon Firearms Federation, otherwise known as OFF. I love that moniker. It gets right down to it. Hands off our guns is the idea. And the we'll post a link to it later, so you'll see the original interview that was called "Oregon Erases the Second Amendment," and we talked about Measure 114, and we're going to get into Measure 114 and see what's going on with that, and then some new stuff that if you haven't been paying attention, you better be, because they're taking your rights away by the day. So without further ado, let's bring on Kevin Starrett. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, good morning.
Hi. I know it's not a great up day for you after yesterday. Uh, Kevin Starrett has been involved in the movement to protect our Second Amendment rights for probably decades. I would assume. Is that right?
Oh, many. Yes.
How do you? I wasn't thinking of asking you this question, but how do you keep your positive motion when you're in a state that's just getting hammered left and right on Second Amendment rights?
Uh, Well, I mean, at this point, it really is a matter of looking at, I've spoken to two legislators since yesterday. And when I look at what's happening in Oregon, and it isn't just my issue, it isn't just the Second Amendment, people's rights to protect themselves and their family. It's their ability to keep their property. It's their
Yep.
ability to afford their tax bill. It's their ability to keep their children safe from people who want to sexually mutilate them. It's their ability to maintain their farms or their homes, all of which are being stolen from them.
Yep.
Nobody who we've elected with the expectation that they would defend our rights is willing to stand up and do anything about it. So since we still exist in a system where things are done by vote, it's not a matter of who has the biggest hammer, it's who has the most votes.
Mm.
It does certainly appear that Oregon is done. It's circling the drain. In the absence of kind of massive federal intervention, which would, of course, be blocked by the courts, it's just a matter of time. After the alert I did yesterday, virtually every communication I got from everybody who responded to it was how they're either leaving the state or desperate to leave the state.
Mm.
And for me, it appears now, since we have open Marxists in our legislature, we have open Marxists, people who, demonic people who are making the rules. The way I see the job of my organization is to create as much flack and interference as possible to give good people the opportunity to leave. Because
Wow.
there
Yeah.
really isn't, you know, after having done this for such a long time, what we see from the Republicans is this constant mantra of we just have to elect more Republicans. Well, really, two of the Republicans who voted on the gun bill yesterday complained that they didn't get to vote. They didn't get to split the bill into two separate parts so that they could screw Oregonians on one part of the bill
Mhm.
because they oppose the other part of the bill. So
Right.
Senator McLean and Senator Nash both got up on the floor and said, "Boy, we really wanted to vote against gun owners' rights, but you added these other elements, and now we." So why would we want to elect more Republicans? What we need to do is elect more patriots.
Right.
The fact is that when I started this organization, and before I started it, and this is like going on 30 years now, I worked for a national organization, a national gun rights organization called Gun Owners of America.
Mm.
And guess who was in charge of the legislature? The Republicans. And it was Kevin Mannix, who's back in office now, who in 1998, 99 was pushing gun control. And we managed to defeat it. And that was, the first session that Oregon Firearms was in the legislature. We managed to defeat it. But even the other gun groups were supporting it.
Hmm.
And so electing more Republicans is not the answer. What we have to do is elect people who actually have some ethics and some principles and some backbone. And right now, they're in very short supply. So given that the things that are happening now are the result of people voting rather than people taking up arms and, storming the castle, there doesn't seem to be any indication that there's a willingness on the part of the Republicans, either in the caucuses or the party, to say, hey, This has got to stop. Oregon's become dangerous. It's become expensive. It's become a horrible place to live, and it's getting worse by the day. So what we see day after day is press releases from the Republicans saying, "Oh, the Democrats are doing this terrible thing. We had this wildfire bill, and they're holding it hostage." But they show up day after day after day to provide the quorum that gives the Democrats the power to enact this evil on the people.
Oh, okay. You said a lot already. You really have, Kevin. I appreciate it. There's so many things I want to ask after you said all that, but let's kind of take some of these pieces. So first of all, by the way, I totally understand people wanting to leave. I get that. And there's a certain point where you have critical mass, I suppose, and it becomes very difficult. But in the meantime, at least while we're here, we're going to do everything we can to kind of keep the salt, as Jesus said, keep the salt on the earth, keep it salty, because you remove the salt and you remove everything. So, and I'm dealing with it down here in Josephine County. We're dealing with the homeless situation, which is out of control. Had been dealing with that quite a bit. Just put out a post on that this week. But you're right; all of these things go together. So, but I totally get the idea of giving people time, those that do want to leave. Unfortunately, when people do leave, of course, you got the other side of that, which is it just gets weaker, right? When good people leave, then everything becomes weaker too. So, but while we're here, we're going to give it a good. We're going to do all we can. That's what we're here for. We're here to stand up for freedom, and we couldn't do anything different. It's in your DNA at some point to stand up for freedom. It's not like you could just flip a switch. Some of these Republicans seem to be able to, but I don't think you're ever going to be able to do that, Kevin.
Well, I mean, I'm certainly at the point in my life where I think it would be nice to, you know, do something less contentious, but
Yeah,
but I can't because I look at the people who are in Oregon who are good people who are being having the crap beat out of them by
yeah,
the system in so many ways. I mean, for crying out loud, we have a horrible shortage of housing in Oregon. So the Democrats just passed a bill to make it far worse by saying that if some subcontractor somewhere doesn't pay an illegal alien who worked on a construction project, then the owner of the house can be sued. They have nothing to do with it. They had no part to play in this at all. But what's happening is the Democrats take this position. We're going to go after anyone who contributes, anyone who
yeah.
produces, anyone who owns anything is a target. And there seems to be nothing standing in their way at this point. And so,
Their constituency is the people who are creating the trouble, the drug abusers who don't want to quit, everybody that's causing harm or sucking off the system is their constituency, right?
well, and they're a big constituency because the parasites will always outnumber the producers. And when the parasites find out they can vote their way into some level of prosperity by taking your money away. Look, the bill that passed yesterday said that all these different firearms related devices now, if you're in possession of them, and many of them are currently legal, some are already illegal, so it was pointless to
Mm-hmm.
make them illegal. But the ones that are illegal, if you're in possession of them, you are a felon. Now, they're legal to own, they're legal to use, but after this bill passes and the governor signs it, these people will be treated like child porn purveyors and killers, the same level of penalty. And there's no alternative. In fact, it's weird. There's nothing you can do with them. There's no grandfather. You have them, you're a felon. End of story. Weirdly, Floyd Prashanski, who's a far left Democrat gun grabber who's been there forever, actually advised people. This is a bill he's pushing. Advise people, oh, just keep it in your safe. No one will issue a warrant for you. Is advising people to break the law and make themselves felons. This guy's supposedly an attorney.
Mm.
The point is that and the other thing the bill did is it says if you have an Oregon concealed handgun license, we will now make you a criminal if you go into any one of these many places like the building belonging to a water board. Now, there haven't been any issues. The comments have been, oh, the city council, the county commissioners, they're terrified because CHL holders are coming into their building without a single example of anybody misbehaving.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have a concealed carry permit, you've gone through a little bit at least to get yourself checked out in a further manner to say that you're okay so you can have a concealed carry permit. I mean, isn't that part of the process? Isn't that part of the point of the process?
Of course it is, but the reality is this: is that nothing in these bills actually prevents a bad person from going into these places and hurting anyone. Now it
Right.
hasn't been happening, but to say we will single out the people who've obeyed, who played by the rules, and we will screw you while doing nothing to prevent a bad person, when in fact, if you look at what's going on in the state for the last couple of years, we protect criminals. We protect felons. We protect people who come here illegally.
Right.
We protect people who break the law and rape and murder. And those people are given all levels of protection. And the people who said, I want to play by the rules, I also want to be able to protect myself and those around me. No, you people make us uncomfortable. So we're going to screw you. It's absurd. It's pointless, but it's driven out of the hate that motivates Democrats. It's enabled by the Republican spineless weaklings.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of summed it up quite well. So this what we talked about yesterday going through, and I just mentioned that and showed that piece on there from the Oregon. What was that from? That was from
The Oregonian
the
from
Oregonian. Yeah, the Oregonian. So I just showed that piece there. Um, that's what they dealt with yesterday, and that was in the Senate. The Oregon Senate was SB 243. So let's go through that if you don't mind.
Sure.
So they say they're getting rid of what they call rapid fire activators, which are is that another word for bump stocks, basically?
A bump stock is included in that category of devices. So there
Okay.
are other devices that are being outlawed in this bill.
Okay. So let me clarify here. They because the media here, the Oregonian is essentially throwing that into automatic weapons. Now, this is not the same as automatic weapons, which are illegal, as far as I know, across almost every state in America.
Well, no, and this is a mistake that a lot of people make. As a matter of fact, when one of the senators, Lisa Reynolds, yesterday was like, "Machine guns are illegal." No, machine guns are not illegal. Machine guns are just heavily taxed. There are states that ban them, but federally they're not illegal, and they're not illegal in Oregon.
Hmm.
But no,
Okay.
these devices do not make things machine guns. Machine guns have a very technical definition, and granted, the federal definitions around firearms are frequently absurd. But no, that's not the case. Now, there are a couple of devices that are included in the banned list that do effectively turn a gun from semi-automatic into fully automatic, but they've been illegal forever.
Hmm.
And they're only in the hands of hood rats and gangbangers who are not going to obey this law anyway. The other devices are kind of like gadgets and gimmicks, which most certainly do not turn things into machine guns, because if they did, they would be banned under federal law already. And to have someone like Przansky say that only use for these guns is to murder as many people as quickly as possible is just a blatant slur against the thousands of Oregonians who have them and use them recreationally, because quite frankly, they consider them to be fun.
So,
It's
so, so
appeals to me, but they're not hurting anybody.
okay. So why not just make these type of things that people are putting on their guns? Why not just quit selling them, stop selling them, and say, okay, we're not going to keep selling this stuff. You can't buy them anymore. If they really want to do that, but it sounds like they want to make it more punitive and just make it so that if you're found with one now, you're going to be against the law. They're going to prosecute you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they should be made illegal because I
Right.
don't. I think that people's behavior is the issue, not their possessions. But if you made something illegal and said, okay, no more, no future transfers or purchase of these, at least you would not have taken the thousands of Oregonians who own these things now and who have done nothing wrong and say, we're going to put you in prison while the rapists and the murderers and the drug dealers walk free.
Right.
What people have to understand that this is not a difference of opinion philosophically or politically. This is hatred. The Democrats are motivated by hatred, and if they say, and we see this in a lot of issues. A lot of legislators just get some personal thing that bugs them. Like one legislator doesn't like plastic, so she's banning plastic utensils and forcing all these restaurants to completely change how they do business because I just don't like plastic.
Right. Right. So it's personal. It's become a personal gripe session.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we now are going to pass a bill that makes we're going to have a certain day in May will be Persian New Year. That cost thousands of dollars to pass that crap because one damn legislator decided I wanted a Persian New Year and everybody else was afraid to say no because they'd be called racist. We've
So
got another idiot legislator who says we're going to remove the word militia from our laws because he believes that white militias are roaming in the countryside murdering black people. He's an idiot. And they're afraid to say you're an idiot because he's black and that would be considered racist.
yeah,
Anyway,
how did it? By the way, how did this happen? I might have brought this up the first time we talked, but how did it happen that the West Coast became so left in Oregon, California, Washington?
that is a wonderful question and something I and others think about all the time. Like, how did it get this bad? And I assume the answer is fairly complicated. I don't know. I don't know what makes it seem like the country's tilted and everything weird rolled into the West Coast.
Yeah,
I can't explain how a beautiful state like Oregon has turned into a toilet. And there's an explanation. I don't have
yeah,
it.
and it seems like there's no connection to the mood of the rest of the country, right? With Trump getting back in, and winning all the swing states. Clearly, there was a mandate for something more conservative going on, and the message never got to Oregon somehow.
Well, I mean, look, we know part of this is voter fraud. That's not speculation. They've told us there's voter fraud. The
Mm,
only question is how much is there? Whatever they've admitted to is not nearly what there is. We do know that over time, as they get their foot in the door, they completely control the courts now. There's no
mm,
fairness in the courts. And for why the Republican Party is so weak and so determined. I mean, we have operatives in the Republican Party who spend lots of money to torpedo conservative candidates. One of them actually, I mean, they make money torpedoing. They're Republicans who make a lot of money torpedoing conservative candidates, like Brian Iverson, who's married to Vicky Brees Iverson, who's a House rep. He makes a lot of money attacking conservatives like Noah Robinson. But he also has a vested interest in making sure that the Republicans continue to act in a very weak fashion because they're not going to walk off because if they walk off, they can't run again. And guess what happens if they don't run again? He loses his job as chief of staff with Dick Anderson, which
right.
is about $100,000 a year.
Oh boy. Okay.
You,
So
you have all these forces in the party, some of them have been around for 20, 30 years, whose only job is to make sure nothing gets done. But it's
yes.
a cancer that's spread, and at some point, it's just a reluctance to actually address it.
Right. What are the Republicans doing, if anything, regarding the mail-in voting, which is such a joke that that is a abrogation of our rights to a fair vote. It's just you mail something, it goes in the mail, you sign something, and you throw it in their mail system. God knows that if it ever gets to the intended part where someone actually counts a vote, who sees anyone counting that? It's just really weird.
There's currently a ballot measure that's in the works. It's just got a ballot title that will repeal mail-in voting. There are Republican legislators who are arguing against it. There are people like, I'm pretty sure David Brock Smith is opposed to this. There are Republicans who are saying, no, no, this is a great system. We have to keep it. There's no voter ID. There's no confirmation. I mean, I had an adult son who'd moved out of the house 7 years ago, who's still getting ballots. Wasn't
Yeah,
even living in the state anymore.
yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, this kind of crap goes on all the time. And in other states, you show up at the polls, you show ID, you prove who you are. But Oregon, I mean, we know there's voter fraud,
Yeah.
period. It's just a matter of how much. So
It's obvious just based on the way it's run. It's a
there
fraudulent
has
system.
to be. There's this fraud in everything. And in this case, the manipulation's unbelievable. But
Yeah.
so that's an issue. But there's other things. If you look at the makeup of Portland, I mean, Portland, no matter how bad things get there, they keep voting to make it worse. I mean, they just changed their city council system, I think, from 5 to 12. They couldn't get 5 people to agree. Now they got 12 people. The city admits it's completely broke. So what do? They cut $2 million out of the police department.
Oh, and they added 7 people to the board to the
Yeah.
council.
And they, and some of them are open communists,
Are
but
they
this,
paid? Are they paid for that?
of course, they're paid for it. Now, and they get to vote themselves huge raises and increase their staff while they're saying there's no money. We have no money left for the homeless. Although they've increased the homeless budget over and over and over as the homeless population has exploded. But at no point does because look, you got to understand, there are people who are getting rich off of this stuff. There are
Yes.
nonprofits who get government grants who, if this issue was ever cleaned up, they'd be out of business. We're supposed to be we're providing free needles to drug addicts. We're giving vodka to drunks, for crying out loud. This is
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
This is a business. And if you have leftist nonprofits can make a $10,000 donation to the Democrats, or in the case of the drug dealers, a considerably larger amount of money in shopping bags and cash, that can turn into a $2-3 million donation back to them from the legislature because it ain't their money.
People don't think of that aspect. People tend to think about, Republicans are over here voting more rightward, Democrats are over here voting more leftward. But the whole idea of all of the stuff going on in the background that serves people making money off of and gaining power from, all the corruption angle to it doesn't seem to be discussed much when it seems to be the biggest problem of all.
The corruption in Oregon is astonishing, and it's not even hidden. I mean, you have drug dealers bringing shopping bags full of cash to legislators. Then that money gets misreported. You've got a Secretary of State who's supposed to be investigating these drug dealers, is getting paid by them. And then when she loses, when she quits, and her ethics fine was, I think, $1,600, which they've jacked up to the enormous cost of $3,600 now. This woman was completely corrupt. And we know the bar gave her license back.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, so the corruption is not even hidden.
Who is she and what is her role in Oregon?
Mia Fagan, our former Secretary of State, was
And she didn't do any jail time.
no, she's not doing any jail time. She got fined by the Ethics Commission, but she quit her job after it was exposed she was on the payroll of the drug dealers, the pot dealers she was supposed to be doing an audit of, getting $10,000 a month from them. And
you're getting all this money, you're getting $10,000 a month, and then you eventually get you have to pay the huge sum of $3,600 one time, right?
Because you have to understand the people who
Oh,
all of the people who are making the judgments about what the punishment should be are left-wing Democrats.
are in on it,
Yeah, of course.
and they're getting something.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you're going to have the left-wing Democrat Attorney General investigate the left-wing Democrat Secretary of State. I don't think so.
So the media, the Oregonian down here, we have the Daily Courier, Grants Pass. They've got to be. I know there's some decent reporters everywhere, including at these places, I'm sure. But for the most part, there's got to be major corruption. I mean, why aren't they reporting? They'll attack the right constantly, anybody who's a Republican or anyone on the right side, but kid gloves to the left. And
because reporters are, in the cartel media, which is what the Courier is, and the Oregonian, and the failing Oregonian, which is now basically a real estate rag. They're all far left Democrats, and they're incredibly lazy. They're out and out liars, provable liars all the time. We've seen this from the top to the bottom, for crying out loud. I mean, the Hunter Biden laptop story, the corruption is so deep and so wide. And when reporters now, because they get paid crap, are 20-year-olds with iPhones. Many of the things we're reading now aren't even written by humans anymore. I think Washington Post just did a very lengthy story about books you can read over the summer. Most of them did not exist because the entire story was written by AI.
Right.
Made up.
Right.
And so AI gets it wrong 90% of the time, which puts it right in the category of human reporters.
Well, AI is merely, and I've used AI to get some information here and there. We all do. Everybody who has a phone uses AI, but it's made up of garbage in, garbage out. I mean, it's whatever is being put into a number of different articles, and they'll put it all together and make some sense out of it. But it's still some human being originally putting in false information.
Well, probably not anymore. I mean, there are AIs now that threaten to blackmail people.
Oh, yes, I've heard of some of that. That's true.
I mean, it's hilarious. But the fact is that the average reporter now does no work, just regurgitates press releases, and will make statements like, you see every statement you ever see attributed to Donald Trump is Donald Trump falsely said that the election was stolen. Or the idea that autism could be caused by vaccines has been debunked. That's some 19-year-old who is like, but been debunked by who?
Right.
You, because you got a journalism degree from PSU. They're incredibly lazy,
Well, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing, a process. If you don't do the work and put out the truth about things, then you can say that someone is falsely stating something because you haven't put out the truth to begin with, right?
if you have a place to put it out. But I mean, like
Yeah.
the Oregonian, all Portland TV stations, they're all staffed by really stupid people who make stuff up and lie a lot. I mean, they just do. And that by and large, I will not respond to media requests, from the cartel media anymore because I know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
If they publish a single word of what you said, it'll literally be a single word. So it's utterly pointless. You don't get to have any impact on the narrative at all. But the fact is that the left wing has completely infiltrated academia and the media. And it's hilarious now to watch the people from public broadcasting complaining that Trump's going to take their money away because they're the only source of unbiased news. For God's sakes, public broadcasting. It's like OPB is the Oregon Propaganda Bureau.
Right.
It is.
Right. Man, Kevin, you've got me off on so much stuff today. That's really, I started to ask you about some very limited, not limited, they're not small things. I mean, the Second Amendment is a huge thing, but it was kind of, I got a few questions here about the Second Amendment and what happened yesterday, and I can ask a few more, but it's like, wow, you kind of opened the box here, and it's like, this is the bigger problem, really, is
It
the
is. It absolutely
left-wing
is.
corruption.
The gun issue is one issue. Obviously, it's the issue I work. But when you look at what's happening in the state, and when you look at the unbelievable amount of lying and corruption, it's so endemic, it's so deep that you don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm like,
Yeah.
have to ask at a certain point, but we'll have to like follow a lot of this stuff up. But just in terms of the gun issue here, just so the people know, you had Measure 114 originally, right, that we talked about. That is now being finally challenged. That's finally being challenged by in the Oregon Supreme Court, right?
Correct.
By the Tony Aiello, I believe his name is
He's
the
the
man,
attorney who's handling that
and he's
case.
working with another gun group on this. I don't have
Well,
it right.
we've contributed to that, but at this point, I don't believe there's any other gun groups involved.
Okay, so they're trying to get it argued by the Oregon Supreme Court, right? What
Right.
is the chance of that?
I don't know. My guess is that they'll just kick it right back. I think trying to predict what a court will do is really a dangerous thing. You just never know. But it is Oregon. It is the courts are controlled by Democrat appointed people, and they're not gun friendly. So
Right.
it's impossible to say for sure. But
Right. What they're
if
going
I
to do.
had to guess, I would say they will just send it. They will just say we're just going to agree with the appeals court that the measure is constitutional. And then the appeals court will go back to the Harney County Court and say, you got it wrong, get it right this time. And at that point, it will be put on the docket and re-decided at some point in the future. But keep in mind, the legislature already has a bill that repeals 114.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about, is that HR 3075?
HB.
HB, excuse me, HB. Okay.
3075. Yeah, it repeals the measure and basically reestablishes all the elements of it at higher cost.
So really,
Yeah.
it is Oregon. I forgot.
They managed to make it worse, And
So that's in the Joint Committee of Ways and Means right now, right?
yeah, that's sitting there. And Ways and Means is a committee that really has no deadline. So that bills go to Rules or Ways and Means to keep them alive. And so, what's holding that up? Well, I just kind of speculate if the court finds the measure constitutional, then they don't need the bill, right? The bill, they only need the bill if the court disagrees, which I think is unlikely. But
so they have two ways to get you.
Yeah, they have two ways to get you, and it's entirely possible that people talk to each other. It's entirely possible that the reason the bill hasn't moved yet is because they know what the Supreme Court's going to do. And if the Supreme Court says, yes, it's constitutional, then legislators are not in the position of having to impose this and take the blame for it. Then the people decide.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If the court does decide it's constitutional, then they're going to, something has to happen soon, basically, is what I'm saying.
All right, so they got a plan B. And obviously the court system in Oregon is left to begin with, and
Oh, of course.
you get on the Supreme Court, I'm sure, in a pretty political manner, I would assume.
Well, listen, most judges in Oregon are appointed by the governor because there's a game we play. And the game is that we theoretically have elections for judges, but we really don't because judges always retire 2 or 3 months before their term is over,
Mm.
which means that the governor appoints their replacement, who then becomes the incumbent, who is the only candidate who is identified as an incumbent in the voter's guide, and lawyers don't want to run against them. So, in fact,
Wow.
the reality is judges are appointed by the governor. And once in a while, somebody gets elected, but it's damn rare.
So there's no balance, there's supposedly with our U.S. Constitution, probably the Oregon Constitution, to have some type of balance of power, right? Three separate, an executive, the judiciary, legislative, but you have that in name only. Obviously, it
Yeah.
sounds like.
Yeah, we have no balance of power whatsoever. And not only do we have no balance of power in Oregon, but we have no opposition. You have to
Right.
remember it was Republicans who tried to make criminals out of their party leaders. Two Republican senators who filed a bill to make their party leaders criminals because they also served in the legislature. And they did this with far left Democrat senators. These were two Republican senators who tried to pass a bill to make Dennis Linthicum and Dallas Hurd criminals because they were serving as party leaders.
How do they make them? I mean, on what kind of charges do you make them a criminal?
The law would be changed to say that if you are serving both in the legislature and as a party officer, you're breaking the law. And I think it was like a $200 a day fine or something.
Oh,
It
wow.
was obscene. You have to remember, look, Christine Dreisig, who was the House Republican leader, led the charge to censure and remove Mike Neerman, the most conservative member of the House, because he stood up to the mob and opened the doors and allowed the people of the state to come into their building when they were locked out during COVID. The bravest, most conservative member of the Oregon House caucus was screwed by the leader of the House.
What is his name? What is his name again?
Mike Neerman.
Mike Neerman.
And then every Republican House rep voted along with Drazen to screw this guy. This is a woman who, after the George Floyd trial, after Derek Chauvin was wrongly convicted of murder for a guy who died of a drug overdose, tweeted, "Guilty, justice is served." She's a House Republican.
And she's the one that ran for governor.
That's correct.
Yeah, and didn't lose by too much. But if she would have won, it wouldn't have make too much difference. It sounds like.
It could well have been worse.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
That's interesting. How would it have been worse, by the way?
Well,
Because Tina Kotek is like a far left, right?
Yes.
Far left.
So is Christine Drazen. When Christine Dreisig, you can listen to what she says, or you can look at how she votes.
Okay. Yeah,
So we did a whole website about her. I mean, she voted to legalize ropes with loops at the end. She voted to screw the cops every chance she could get.
Ropes to make them illegal, or rope with a loop?
Yeah, that's a racist statement. A rope with a loop at the end. That's what's in the bill. She voted to screw the cops every chance she got. She voted twice to put tampons in kindergarten boys' bathrooms and then lied about it. This is a leftist individual.
She voted for those things, which are a matter of public record.
Absolutely.
And that's it. She didn't
to claim I didn't do it. It's public record. It's there. It's written down. You can't lie about this. Yeah. Look, I mean, we had Sherry Helt was a Republican House rep. I was in a meeting with her. She was running for the head of BOLI, right? She votes with the left. She's gone now, but she voted with the left all the time. She was anti-gun, pro-abort, mandatory vaxxer, right? Running as a Republican.
What is BOLI? You said BOLI. What is that?
Bureau of Labor and Industries.
Okay.
So she's running for that office as she's a Republican House rep. One of the first people Drazen gave money to, right? Far left woman. I'm in a meeting with her, and on her website, as she's running, it says on her website, Trump is unfit for office. Okay. This is a Republican running. I mean, I have news stories of her saying this. Okay. So in this meeting, a person who worked for me, we're sitting next to each other. And I said, look, you're a mandatory vaxxer, you're pro-abortion, you're anti-gun. How does that make you a Republican? I said, and you said that Donald Trump's unfit for office. And she goes, I've never said that. I said, no, it's on your website. She goes, it is not. And my picked up her phone.
Would you like a screenshot?
There it is. And she kept saying, no, it's not. I mean, these people are insane. We're looking at it, right? We are looking at it. I mean, I was in a meeting with a guy who ran for governor, Bud Pierce, right? And same thing happened with Newt Buehler. I said, when Bud Pierce was there on behalf of his wife who was running for House seat, and I said, you know, your wife got an F from the NRA. That's hard to do. And he said, that's your opinion. I said, no,
No, you got an F on the NRA.
I don't get an opinion. It's on their website, you know.
Do they go to a school of denial school or something?
I don't understand it. I mean, if you're looking, you know, it's like I'm looking up in the sky and I'm looking at the sun, and you're telling me it's nighttime. You know?
You're right, right. Oh my God. And I'm wondering how come you still have hair, because I'm wondering how the hair hasn't been pulled out yet, Kevin.
Yeah, I get that sometimes, but it wasn't always white, you know.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. The color turns after a while. Wow. Okay, so just so people are clear, though, on Measure 114. So everybody's clear who's watching this, because not everyone's going to watch this is from Oregon or even pays attention in Oregon. The Measure 114 essentially knocks out the Second Amendment. Is that fair to say, Kevin?
Yeah, it will end the lawful sale of guns in the state.
Yeah, I mean, it said they want to ban, and they're using, as you said, as a backup. If it doesn't go through the Supreme Court, Oregon Supreme Court, they're going to use HB 3075 to do it. So one of the things is large capacity magazines, which they mean over what, 10 rounds or something?
What we would call standard capacity
Yeah,
magazines.
yeah. And the other one, so that would be gone. And if you have them, you're a criminal, right?
Yeah, essentially what they say is that you're allowed to have them, but you would have to prove that you got them prior to the ban going into effect, which
Good
is
luck with that.
what's impossible. It can't be done.
Yeah.
Period. Flat out cannot be done.
That's really that's crazy.
I mean,
And then
it bans most conventional shotguns too.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's right. The other thing is, and there's other things too in the bill, but I'm picking a couple of the big ones. The one that really fries me is just you have to have a permit to get a gun, right? Yeah.
No, you have to get a permit to try to get a
Oh,
gun.
to try. Sorry.
Yeah,
And they're going to increase the fees tremendously,
yeah, they can double the fees. Yeah.
right? And make it so,
I mean, they double the fees in the bill. The
right.
ballot measure has certain fees. The bill, if they pass that, will double the fees. Yeah.
Okay. And explain how, if you're a seller of arms in Oregon, how that would affect you and essentially drive you out of business.
Well, okay. Keep in mind, there's another bill, 3076, which
Mm,
does drive gun dealers out of business. It
mm.
imposes restrictions that no one can comply with. But what 3075 says is you can't come in and attempt to buy a gun without having first gotten a permit, which does not exist. And so the dealer who right now, if you attempt
What
to
do you
buy,
mean it doesn't exist? The permit doesn't exist.
these permits have to be issued by sheriffs or police,
Hmm.
but conditions under which they can issue them they're not available. They don't exist.
Mm.
We're required to take a class that nobody gives, and that class has to be approved by the police.
Now, why does nobody give the class?
Well, because the requirements for the class, in addition to there being live fire, and the proponents of this bill hilariously have lied and said, oh, no, you could do it with a toy gun. But the bill says it has to be live fire. I mean, these people are absolute morons. But in addition to live fire, the instructor, who has to be approved by law enforcement, has to teach all federal gun laws, all state gun laws, and suicide issues. Now, I've been a nationally certified firearm instructor for about 40 years, right?
Yeah.
And I can speak pretty, accurately on Oregon gun law. But keeping up with federal gun laws, I just got a letter today in an email from ATF with all the new regulations they're talking about. These things change minute by minute.
Mm.
And I'm certainly no expert on suicide, So who's going to authorize me to teach gun owners about suicide? And why should I?
Yeah.
In my town of Canby, we've lost a couple of young kids to suicide in the last few years who stepped in front of trains.
Yeah.
Right? All right. My son's a paramedic. One of the first calls he was on was an attempted suicide with a firearm. The guy survived. The kids who stepped in front of trains did not. So Why should I be?
Why no class for that, right?
Well, I mean, I'm not a suicide expert.
Yeah,
In fact,
yeah, yeah.
instructor. And so it's just absurd. And the reality is that even if you get, I mean, I'm sure that if I talked to a friendly sheriff, they'd authorize me to teach the class. But really, would I be qualified? And
Right.
then could I be challenged by the state? Because the state hasn't made it clear what their plans are.
Well, isn't that another thing? Isn't that another thing that the state will have nebulous things like we're dealing with the homeless issue now, and they talk about uh, what do they say? If you have places for homeless people, you have to have objectively reasonable
Yeah.
means for them to do their thing. What do you mean by that?
You
They
mean
don't explain it.
I could explain it to you right now. It means whatever some left wing judge tells you it
That's
means.
what it's meant so
Yeah,
far.
exactly. So if you have rules that are nebulous enough, you can always
You
arrest
can always play with that
and
and make
that's
them go the way you want.
and the thing is, if you torture yourself and sit through legislative hearings, as I've done for many years, when these issues are brought up, and you say to legislators, "Well, look, you haven't clarified this. We're not sure what people are supposed to do," they will literally say, "That's your problem."
Really.
Yeah, they just don't care. When you point, and this is on both sides of the aisle, when you point out to people that there are big problems with their bill, they'll tell you, "Oh, the courts will sort that out." Now, listen, we're talking now about these devices that they claim turn guns into machine guns, and I have a letter which I'm happy to provide to you from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms saying that a shoelace is a machine gun.
What?
A shoelace is a machine gun. So now, when this got brought up at the hearing, and people said, we don't
What does
really,
that even mean? I don't even understand
what it
that.
means is that if you
You
tie
can
a,
do something with it to turn it into it.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you attach it to a gun, a semi-automatic firearm in a certain way, you now, and that, it's not that it converted a gun into a machine gun. The shoelace itself is a machine gun. Okay, this is the idiocy that we're dealing with.
Do we have to make shoelaces illegal then?
Could Now, when this was brought up by Senator Kim Thatcher in the hearing, Broadman, Senator Broadman, God forbid this guy's your senator. This guy's unbelievably stupid. And Przansky, who's even stupider, was like, well, we don't think the courts will reach that conclusion. Well, the courts have reached some incredible conclusions,
Yeah.
saying that magazines are not protected because they're accessories. Well, that's like saying a trigger is an accessory or a barrel is an accessory, and you can have a gun, but you can't own any of the parts, or that it's legal
A
to
gun magazine is an accessory?
yeah, it's legal to ban
It's
a
part of
lever.
the gun. We all know
Of
that.
course, it's a component. But look,
Component.
I mean, on the floor, as I said on the floor yesterday, we had two Republican senators saying, "Yeah, we want to ban all this stuff." Republicans, we want to ban all this stuff, but you put other stuff in the bill, so now we have to vote no. I'm
Well,
so,
they want to ban it if it sounds like a bump stock is the same as a machine gun. That's what I would think. They would,
well,
right?
but it isn't.
Yeah.
And if it were, the feds would. I mean, the feds did ban bump stocks, and the court said you're wrong. It's not a machine gun. You can't do that. Congress can come along and say we're going to outlaw these devices, but the ATF can't just magically say a bump stock is something it isn't. And this
Well,
was a huge mistake that Trump made going along with
yeah.
that. The
But
NRA.
you also said that automatic weapons are actually legal in Oregon. Is that right or not?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, oh, wow.
You
So,
can't afford them anymore because
yeah.
the feds banned legal manufacture after 1986 for civilians. But if
Okay.
you have the money, you can own a machine gun, and lots of people do.
Oh, okay. Okay. Um, Man, this is so interesting. Okay, so if somebody wants to fight this, and I suggest that they do something, right? First of all, they should go to your website, right? They should go to Oregon Firearms Federation,
Yes,
OregonFirearms.org,
firearms.org is the
and you
website.
guys have which I get your updates,
Yeah.
which I appreciate. And Kevin is very politically incorrect, as you can tell by hearing him. And he'll just tell you what he thinks about stuff. He won't sugarcoat it, which is it makes for interesting reading sometimes and enjoyable reading. But I don't think there's probably
Enjoyable really covers it exactly.
yeah. Well, enjoyable is not a good word.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I appreciate your updates and I appreciate your honesty. And I don't think we're probably getting that from almost anybody else in the state. So I appreciate that. So go to OregonFirearms.org for his updates. Also, you can go to your legislature and find out who your legislator is. You can actually call them too. You can send emails to them if you want. I like calling people. I don't do it enough to be quite 100% here, but I prefer to actually talk to people if possible. Of course, you don't talk to the legislator normally, but you talk to someone who answers the phone in their office, and they at least will pass it on to them, right?
Well, they may or may not, but the reality, we used to encourage people to contact legislators, and we did a lot of email blasts. But the thing about a phone call is it's much harder to delete it. Even if you
Mm,
leave a message, they have to listen to the first few minutes to find out if they. In many cases, what legislators do is set up filters so they don't even see emails that just get deleted before they even arrive in their inboxes. But
mm.
you know, our the whole you know our organization has always stressed involvement and leaning on legislators to get things done, but it's getting harder and harder to encourage people to do that since
Right.
the Republicans keep telling us we keep getting these email blasts from Republicans saying you need to send lots of emails to these legislators, which they then themselves ignore. It's like
Right.
so yesterday Dan Bonham, who's the Senate Republican leader, is like, you're going to make your voice heard. Well, Jim Manning's bill to eliminate the militia was the only bill I've seen so far that 100% of the testimony was in opposition, and they're passing that. Okay, 100% in opposition. Dan Bonham got on the floor yesterday and said that most of the emails he got were telling him to walk out.
Yeah.
There he was,
So you don't obviously don't have a representative government.
making your voice heard is becoming more and more of a fool's errand these days. What we got to do is vote these clowns out and get in some patriots. But
I think what we're doing here is good. It's everything helps. We're getting around the mainstream media and a lot of things that they say that they just won't print. A lot of times the media, I've been watching the media for a long time. They are very good at generally not lying directly because they know they can be sued for that. They just simply leave things out, right? Which they
well,
do.
no, that's not true. They can't be sued for it. They're not sued for it, and they lie all the time. I mean, they lie constantly. There's not a day that goes by that I don't look at something in the media that's not an outright lie
Well,
about what Trump is doing, things that I've been doing, just complete falsehoods.
you said
Because
they can't be. They can't be sued for it. You're saying.
you could sue. There are circumstances where you could sue for slander or libel. Your chances of winning are pretty low unless you've got an enormous amount of money, let's say someone like Trump does. But just for say something that isn't true, if I can't go into court and prove that they intended to be malicious to,
Oh, intent,
you know,
intent.
no, I mean, you're not going to sue every media outlet that lies. There's not enough money in the world
Yeah.
to do that.
You know what? I'm glad you said that. I stand corrected. So really, you have to improve. You have to prove intent, which is almost impossible.
Sure.
Therefore, they can lie legally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks for that. Another. uh, uh, thanks for
Glad to
that.
make the day.
Another one bites the dust.
Yep.
Anyway, Kevin, thanks for coming on. I didn't want to make it too lengthy. I want people to be able to watch these in a fairly, bite-sized element. And I really hope that they watch today because you really kind of enlightened us on the whole, a much bigger picture. And I know you're an expert on the gun issue and you have been for so long, but really, as you said, it goes so deep here. And I really appreciate you doing that. So
My
anyway,
pleasure.
thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you. Stay out there, stay strong. Don't let them get you down because your voice out there. I mean, I found you and other people are going to find you through this. And don't quit. We need you out there. Basically, what I'm saying. So,
Okay, will
all
do.
right. God bless you, man, and stay out there on doing the good work that you do.
Okay.
All right, man. All right, Kevin Starrett from the gun owners group, Firearms.org. He's the executive director. He's doing great work, and I really appreciate people like that. The truth is so rare these days that it's kind of mind blowing. So if you want more information on what we do, go to Old School Media, oldschoolus.com. If you would like to get in touch with me, and get in touch with Old School Media, info@oldschoolus.com. All right. Thank you for being with us. And I hope get this message out there, get Kevin's message out there and get the message of freedom out there. So spread the news on this thing. I really, really appreciate that. And so does Kevin. All right, and we will see you on the next one.